አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Adebabay Media kan hunduma keenya kan taate waa'ee Ethiopiyaa Adebabay irratti ni gabaasa. Adebabayin kan hundumaati. kan hunduma keenya kan taate waa'ee Ethiopiyaa Adebabay irratti ni gabaasa. Peejii Feesbuukii Adebabay Miidiyaaf chaanaalii yuutuubii keenya irratti nu hordofaa. Adebabay Miidiyaa.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us from around the world. This is Adebabay Media's Viewers Digest program. My name is Hiwet, and my co-host Diagon Ephraim is also with us today. Today we're going to be talking with the co-founders of Justice and Peace for Ethiopia. And Justice and Peace for Ethiopia is a youth-led humanitarian organization that seeks to shed lights on and work to stop ethnic violence in Ethiopia. Stay with us.
According to up-to-date census, more than 65% of Ethiopian population are under 30 years of age. Old millennials, 30 years old, millennials, and post-millennials. Half of these youth are already in college, in the workforce, and part of the political change and leadership that we see in Ethiopia, which is why Adebabay believes that it is essential that we focus on the new generation, their growth, and prosperity if we want to see a better and peaceful Ethiopia, which is today. We have our guests like Hiwet had told us, Bethalem Demese and Hermela Mesfin from Justice, Peace and Justice, Justice and Peace for Ethiopia.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Would you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself before we start? And Hermela, go ahead and start.
So thank you for having us. My name is Hermela Mesfin. I'm a third-year college student. I'm a business and pre-law major. I was born in the U.S., grew up in Ethiopia, and moved to the U.S. back again about 5 years ago. I'm 19 years old.
My name is Bethalem Demese, and I'm a junior at university, and I'm studying engineering with a minor in political science, economics, and philosophy.
Well, thank you for being with us. And Diagon Ephraim will go ahead and start our first question for us.
All right, thank you. It's nice being with you guys, Hermela and Bethalem. So let's start with Justice and Peace for Ethiopia. We've heard a little bit about it, and we've seen you guys on various videos. And Hermela, we've also had the honor of having you in Amharic interview last week. So for our English speakers, tell us a little bit about how this movement, Justice for Ethiopia, had started and what its vision is, and also why at this moment that we want this movement is needed.
This movement was started by the youth due to the recent events. We were about 50 plus students and youth. So we were on social media first. A lot of us, this organization or this movement was started by more than 70 people on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even other platforms. And the first thing that we decided to do was all of us were hearing about what's going on in Ethiopia currently, and we all felt like we had enough, and that the youth needs to speak up because the youth are also getting targeted, and it's also our future. So this organization and this movement was started by over 50 people. We decided on the names together. We decided on the goals together. And right now we have a sitting boards, about 10 to 15 people, but the organization as a whole started with over 50 youth. And
sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. It started when we first heard that about 56 people died early July. The first news broke out. It was about 56. And we read that and everybody was stunned, shocked, and very sad. And we were just trying to process that information. And then another report came out that it was 86. And then that's when a lot of us started moving and we're like, this is enough, because if you remember, October Massacre was in 2019. That was the first online movement that we had where everybody was aware and we were talking about it. But this time we were like, there needs to be a youth voice to talk about these issues, because right now the adults are talking about us and our country and our future country, and we're not on the table. And when the number reached 200, we decided this is going to become an official movement and organization in the future.
Hirmila, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I think she explained it pretty well. Yeah, this is a movement again started by the youth with no political agenda whatsoever. This wasn't about like kind of like political stance or anything of that sort, but rather we all came together on the basis of wanting to make a change within our country and for our country. And yeah, we felt that we needed to be the voice for the voiceless. And like she said, actually it was initially about 8 people or so, and that group chat expanded to 50 people. I don't know if you heard my Amharic interview as well. I explained that on there too. So yeah, that initial group chat of around 8 people or so kind of expanded to 50. And on there, again, it was initially started off as like a rant session where we were like, okay, I'm disappointed that all these people are dying. We're seeing so many hate speeches out there towards Ethiopia and Ethiopian people as a whole. And at that point, again, we've explained on there, as I've explained on my previous interview as well, that we are a pretty diverse group of people within not only the board, but rather, as members of the organization as well. And I think that helped us, kind of come to where we are right now as to, starting and beginning to be a pretty, I guess, kind of liable platform for people to go to find information as to what's going on in Ethiopia and have discussions as to what we need to do in order to bring change to it.
Awesome. So what are some of the specific problems you are hoping to address with this organization?
The first problem that we want to address is that there's obviously an ethnic issue and an ethnic, the reason there's violence is because for the last 30 plus years, Ethiopians from different backgrounds have been targeted, marginalized, and killed. And we want to bring light into that. And in order to do that, the first step is, of course, our generation was robbed of the opportunity to learn about our country. A lot of the history that we learned is, from our parents, and that's not always accurate. A lot of us had to go online and search for resources ourselves written by professors and credible people. And a lot of the misinformation started, and the reason why this violence broke out or this misunderstanding between people is because we don't know our past, or we have been robbed of that. So our first step is to definitely educate the youth. And we don't mean just by like giving everybody, oh, this is the correct thing, but making everything available to them, and they will be able to read it and decide themselves what is the best, what happened exactly to Ethiopia for the last 30, 40, 50 and more years. So what happened during Adwa? What happened during Haile Selassie? All of these questions that a lot of us don't know from a fact-based source. And then once we do that, we hope that we can start the conversation of like what makes us different, then how can we celebrate each other but also coexist, and we hope to address all of that.
You mentioned education, which is very challenging to do in by itself in our community and everywhere, basically. What are some of the challenges that you guys have faced while facing this problem head on?
So again, like she explained, the main issue that we've noticed that is going on currently is the fact that a lot of us get our history from our parents. And that doesn't just go for us, people that, want to claim Ethiopia and be patriotic about it, but also people that have negative kind of aspects on Ethiopia. And we've kind of realized that the issue that's been going on is the fact that, like, when you try to have conversations with groups of people that are coming out saying, Ethiopians did this, Ethiopians did that, and all these different things, is their reference always comes back to, oh, my parents told me this. And that's pretty challenging because at the end of the day, when a child grows up hearing something, and I feel like in every child's life, their parents are pretty important figures, and whatever they say does hold a pretty big value in the way they think and the way their brains are molded. I think that has created a lot of issues for us because, you try to have conversations with them, be like, oh, where did you find this? And then it automatically turns to, oh, my parents told me this. So kind of trying to have discussions with people that already have like a set mindset as to what is going on, just off of the basis of what people tell them, secondary conversations and kind of the history of Ethiopia made into what people want it to be is really a big challenge that we've been facing, and trying to bring awareness as to what really is going on, what the actual history of Ethiopia is, using resources, books, links, all these different things, articles, as to giving credibility to what we say and to what Ethiopia is really about. That's, what we're pushing out right now as well, trying to be as credible as possible, and although difficult, kind of prove to these children, and even if possible go beyond that, to explain to these parents that the mindset that they have on Ethiopia and what's going on is incorrect, and that it lacks research and fact.
With that, if we could go back to Ethiopia a little bit, in the last few years, we've seen such a huge movement within Ethiopia with the youth, like Diakon Ephraim mentioned in the introduction. About 65% of Ethiopians are young, right, within under 30 years. So is there a specific event that happened in the last few years that was the reason for them to mobilize and get to the point that we're getting at right now as far as influencing policies and changes in government that you could point to?
Recently, there have been, but I want to add that the youth have been involved since 97 election, and even before that. The youth have been speaking out, and they have been saying, hear us, this is what we think, but a lot of times we've been shut down. So in 2016, the Eritrea massacre, over 300 people were killed. Burayu massacre in 2018, Addis youth were protesting, and they were targeted, and over 23 people plus at least were killed, according to Amnesty. And in October, just recently, that's when we really saw the online movement. On the ground, Adebabay kids and Ethiopians in Oromo region, Amhara region, Tigray region, they have been speaking out, the youth. But in terms of online, the movement and diaspora's involvement really skyrocketed when October Massacre happened in 2019, where hashtags like October Massacre 2019 and things like that were started. So online-wise, October was the one that really brought a lot of attention, and the youth were finally able to speak up and say the things they wanted to say. But in terms of on the ground, the youth have been fighting for a really long time, and it's just that they've never been heard or have been ignored.
Have you maybe seen a change between the vision and the purpose of the movement from 2016 to today, as far as how the youth is able to mobilize and the kind of work that they've been able to do? because I'm asking that question because I think when we look at what happened in the Eritrea massacre in 2016, there was this huge anger that kind of took over the country from every side of the region, right? And there was a sense of unity and what Ethiopianness that took over the country, and pretty much there were protests all over Ethiopia, and that goal seems to be unified, and everybody was just kind of going for the same vision and purpose. Whereas right now, that may not necessarily be what we're seeing. We might see a few protests here and there, but mostly the movement seems to be limited within the Oromia region. Do you see that as well? And is there any differences as far as the changes from 2016 till today that you see?
Yes, there is actually a pretty big difference because we've noticed that, people, like when we say the youth was involved, it wasn't necessarily like, how do I put this? Kind of the youth that we would say is like Americanized or Westernized. We've seen a lot of Ethiopian, the Ethiopian youth as to like people that just moved from Ethiopia came here, and the reason why they're so involved or they want to get involved is simply because they understand what's been going on through their parents, through actually living through in Ethiopia and all these different things. But I think the main difference that we've noticed right now is that even people that grew up in the U.S., in Europe, in the Western world, really have now started to, pay attention as to what's going on in their own country. And starting this movement, that was really the main goal as to educating kind of the Western Ethiopians as to what is going on and, what you can do about it, know about your history, kind of grow pride about your country and who you are. Even though you didn't live there, you don't necessarily have to grow up in Ethiopia or have pretty strong ties to the country in order to know your roots and where you're from and kind of the history of your country. So, there is a pretty big difference as to, the 2016, even 20 movement. It all became social media based in October with the October massacre, and it wasn't as strong then either because a lot of people were scared to speak up as to what is going on because they kept getting attacked every time they would put out something that stated what was going on. And I think right now our movement is starting to give people a safe space as to, we're with you, we're being the face of this movement. And like I explained on my last interview as well, we do have, we've been facing a lot on our end too. So we're trying to be as brave as we possibly can be on our end and be like, we're going out there speaking up about what's going on in our country, trying to educate the youth as to what's going on. And you shouldn't be afraid to speak up on the truth in Ethiopia as well.
Mm-hmm. So in that case, then what exactly is happening in Ethiopia?
I guess in terms of what's happening, I think that first I do want to say that there's a big gap between the diasporas and the Ethiopians back home, right? A lot of the things that the diaspora is fighting for are things from a Western lens. Like these are the things that matter most. And I know this, I know that, when majority of the diasporas haven't been there for a very long time. And the ones Ethiopians back home, what they want is also different in aspect that a lot of the everyday things they go through is what they care about. Ethiopia is it's a poor country, and a lot of the people, regardless of ethnicity, they're suffering because they're poor. And that's one of the things they're worried about. And there are different ways where they're discriminated. And those are the things the everyday life that they care about, where the diaspora is more seen it from a Western lens of this is how you fix it, and rushing everything to try to, answer for those people back home. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. And that's what's happening right now, where the diaspora is basically pushing to become voice for the people of Ethiopia when the people of Ethiopia know what they want and they just want to get heard. And I think that's the disconnect that's happening, where people here on social media, they post hate speeches, they post things like this is, you should do this, you should do that. If you're angry, go kill your neighbor who's just as poor as you. And the people back home, they're not getting the answers to their questions. And the government needs to do a better job of that. And which is why they're resorting to whatever is gonna, make sense. A lot of the genocides and killings that happen around the world due to ethnicity, we saw in World War II, the Jews were getting killed because of economic reasons. Like, this is why you're poor, it's because of the Jews. This is why you don't have this. This is why you don't have this. And Rwanda, the reason that where people are getting killed is because every problem you have, blame it on this person instead of who we should look at. It's the system. We should ask the government to help us and do this instead of the people that are around us. And that's what's happening right now, where the shift from 2016 was we want to hold the government accountable. We want the government to stop doing this. And now it's it's not the government, it's the people, it's your neighbor, it's your own brother, it's your own friend. And that's what's shifting right now, and that's what's happening. And that's the dangers of it, is because if we stop looking at each other as human beings and start looking at each other as Amara first, or Oromo first, or Gurage first, that's going to not lead to a good thing, because we saw what happened in World War II, we saw what happened in Rwanda, and our goal is to stop that kind of, and that doesn't mean we want to silence voices when they're speaking out about their oppression by the government or by the culture or society in Ethiopia. But
I think we're having a bit of technical problems on their end. If Diakon Ephraim, if you could jump in and
Yeah, with what Beitalem is saying, one thing I was just thinking about is on the, and my next question would have been on the state of hate speech, which is also kind of, you guys are back, right? Which just with Beitalem, what you're saying, one experience, I don't believe in coincidence, because this is actually, I felt like God was trying to teach me or show me the amount of or what kind of things is about to come. One experience I had in 2018, I grew up in Minnesota, so when Dr. Abiy came to visit the diaspora, he also came in Minnesota, as you guys know. So I went back and I was part of the program and part of the rally that Dr. Abiy had. And you guys remember how divisive the whole thing was, where we have half on the other end and half on the other side, almost colliding to one another. It was not really it was not a good scene that we've seen there. But regardless of that, we thought that maybe this is just a beginning of coming together, right? So when I came back to Nashville, Tennessee, and again, I don't believe in coincidence, I believe this is something that was an awakening for me. Right next to me happens to be a woman that actually, again, traveled from Memphis, Tennessee. Actually, she went to Minnesota just for the rally, and she was from where my mother was born from. She was a Muslim born in Adebabay. And for the whole 2 hours, she was, I don't want to repeat some of the words, vicious and hateful words she was saying against, for example, Teddy Afro, of how all hate that she grew up with her basically, I guess, from her findings and her parents had told her. And then at the end, I remember asking her, where are you getting all these stuff that, I mean, we're like, Adebabay is a very small village. My mom always tells me that almost everyone knows each other. There's no Christian and Muslim when they live together. Everybody knows everybody there. And that's not how I have heard from my mother. So I asked her, where are you getting all these information? For example, some of the things that she was talking about is like how Addis Ababa was taken away from them, and how they will make sure that no one lives there unless it's their own ethnicity, and so forth. So I asked her, where are you getting these statistics from? And she mentions two German authors that she read from. So basically, that's her entire argument is based on two books that she read from German authors that are not even probably not even nowhere near to what Pinecrest knows. So these are some of the problems that hate that have grown, whether like Hermela and Bethlehem, you guys both have mentioned that it mostly comes from the parents, but it also comes from these distortion of books that have been read there. So which is why when you guys started, the main challenge that you're facing and the problem is educating the truth, right? So where do you think the state of hate speech or that hate speech is coming from? If you guys could maybe share your experience, and Bethlehem, you could also continue with what you were saying before you got cut off.
So I think as for like where we think the hate and all these different things are coming from, I don't know. I don't want to touch up on this if this was one of your questions ahead of time, but I think it's mainly to do with people, like, again, like she said, the diaspora community trying to connect what's going on back home with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think the Black Lives Matter movement, it's pretty, black and white, where one side seems to be the attacker and then the other seems to be the oppressed. And I think this, kind of trying to compare what's going on in Ethiopia, what's going on within the country to what's going on between the black and white situation is what I would think is the main issue as to why people think that way. If you're trying to compare something that's completely uncomparable whatsoever to what's going on in the country, that does create a big issue because you're seeing it in this lens where, the way people deal with certain things is like, white people are attacking black people. White people have been oppressing the black people for this long. Over 400 years of slavery, it's been from white to black. As to what's going on in Ethiopia, it's not a matter of like, oh, Oromos are specifically being attacked or Amharas or this and that, but rather like it's the system. The system is what's been causing a lot of issues for all ethnic groups within Ethiopia. And I think the issue is when they're sitting in the Western world, looking at the situation from that lens of like this black and white situation, I guess somehow they build in their brain or in their mind that the Oromos are being oppressed and then the rest of the country is somehow the oppressors. I even mentioned this on my last interview as to the fact that they've now started to compare the All Lives Matter movement to what we do. And not only what we do, also to Neftegnas. I've explained last time as well, we've been titled the Neftegna just because we've decided to speak up on what's going on with the rest of Ethiopia and tried to bring light as to what's actually happening, which isn't a specific group just being attacked, but rather, the system kind of creating conflict with like against each other within the country. And I think the only way to, and that's where education comes in, like you just said, Diakon Ephraim as well, education comes in pretty important at that point, because that way you got to kind of like pan out saying like, oh, this is what the Black Lives Matter movement is. What's actually funny is a lot of these people that are yelling about all these different things, the only way you would even make that connection as to the Black Lives Matter movement being similar to what's going on in Ethiopia is if you don't actually even know what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's a lack of knowledge on that end as well, because if you actually knew what the Black Lives Matter movement was standing for, what it was fighting against, and what they've been through in order to come here to this point, yelling for justice on their end, I don't think you would be, kind of in the position to try and compare what's going on here or even within the Western world to what's going on in Ethiopia, because, you understand at that point how long of a struggle they went through, how uncomparable anything, any struggle in the world could ever be to what they've gone through and what they still continue to go through. So I think it's a lack of knowledge on both ends, and that's what we've been trying to do, not only educate people on the matters of what's going on with Ethiopia, but also we've been sending people links for whoever asks and trying to kind of set up a situation where we can explain what the Black Lives Matter movement is actually about as well. Because I myself, even before we started this movement, so as Betty too, we've been pretty big Black Lives Matter advocates. We go out on the protests, all these different things, not only protest-wise. This has been an issue for me, or my concern for years now, the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as Betty. So, and the rest of our board too. So I think we have a pretty good ideology as to what it is. And again, just to kind of briefly put it, Black people have gone through slavery and struggles for over 400 years. And whether it's through police, workplaces, educational facilities, hospitals, all these different things, they still till today face injustices. And what's going on in Ethiopia, on the other hand, is a systematic ethnic cleansing. That's what's happening, is what we've titled it to be, and what we've kind of panned it out to be. So these are completely uncomparable matters, and I think that's where the issue comes from.
Yeah.
I also want to add that you said before I got cut off. Again, we've been robbed of education. A lot of people right now who are angry at at this ethnicity or that ethnicity is because they don't know their history of their own ethnicity. When you've been taught over and over again that you are weak, there's no one great within your ethnicity, your people, you start to develop resentment and anger. And for example, with the Oromo Lives Matter movement, or the movement going on with the Oromo youth, a lot of people, even in Ethiopia, we haven't learned the great Oromo leaders, Amara leaders, Gurage leaders, and our history is so rich, and there's so many great people. And I don't like dividing them by ethnicity, but there are within a lot of the ethnicities, there have been great people that came about, but we haven't learned about them. So it's very easy to be like, my ethnicity was oppressed, or there's no one great in my ethnicity because they've been silenced. And when the fact is, there's so many great leaders within all of the ethnicities that fought for Ethiopia and that fought for their own people. And that's where it stems from, is when you don't know your own history, you start to resent the people that you think that are to blame. And that's also is where it's from. It's the everyday conversations that we have with people, where we dismiss each other, or when someone wants to talk about their ethnicity or their background, dismissing it or making stereotypes, things like that definitely have an effect. And those are the things that also stem from.
And you guys are not just participants of Black Lives Matter, but I believe you are members, right, at the Black Lives Matter?
Yeah. For Alexandria, I'm part of the Alexandria Black Lives Matter for the cops, to defund cops personally, but also, we've been part of it.
How did you find, just to follow up on this, since you mentioned Black Lives Matter, which would have come next on the question, but it's fine that it goes together. What differences have you? Hermela has mentioned very well the distinctions and how actually very rude of us as Ethiopians to even use it as a compare it to what's going on in Ethiopia. But we also have a problem with how not really. I don't want. There's no blame on this except due to education, but a lot of the youth, Ethiopian youth in the United States, are more familiar with the Black Lives Matter, or they feel more comfortable being part of the movement than they are even to speak about what's going on in Ethiopia. So, as members of both of movement, what kind of experiences, or what have you done to bring that gap and say to Ethiopian youth, hey, this is your movement as well. You should be as involved as you are with Black Lives Matter. If you could share a little bit of your experience on that. How do you bring those together?
In terms of the lack of involvement from the youth, there have been many people who are part of the Black Lives Matter movement, and they feel more connected to it because they grew up here, they were raised here, or they were born here, and they feel like, when I get stopped, nobody's going to ask me if I'm Ethiopian. If you're black, you're black. If you get stopped by a cop who's racist, you're gonna get killed. And those are the things that a lot of black Ethiopians and black people resonate with. and we definitely don't want to say that that's not important. It is. But Black liberation, one place, is Black liberation everywhere. And as you fight for Black Lives Matter here, Black Lives Matter in Africa matter too. Black Lives Matter in Europe matter too. And when one of us get hurt, the Black Lives Matter is, yes, it's a movement that started in America, but as a whole, it's liberation for Black people to be, not be oppressed systematically. And that's one of the things that we actually don't understand is if you fight for Black Lives Matter here, why is it so hard to fight for Black Lives Matter in Ethiopia? And one of the things that a lot of the people have answered to us is, I've asked some people our age, like, why are you so scared to get involved? Is one, there's backlash, and they don't know enough, so they can't defend themselves. So if they say, if they get up and say, well, I think we should, push for, a unity Ethiopia and, celebrate diversity, they get hate. And they're scared and they can't defend themselves, so they'd rather just not talk about it. And the second thing is, a lot of the things that's happening right now is being seen as, oh, it's just 2 ethnicities, 3 ethnicities fighting each other, or, oh, it's just the government, always doing this, when it's just a deep-rooted problem of marginalization and discrimination that happened to a lot of ethnicities that has been silent for so long, and the bubble is about to pop. And it's scary because if we don't do anything about it, it's going to be a genocide. And if we keep getting silent, the people here, they're going to, a lot of the people say, like, I'm scared for Ethiopia and I do want to be involved. It's just, I don't know enough, or everybody has their own opinions, but they're always, biased. So how can I get unbiased information, and they believe, oh, well, I'm this ethnicity, so this doesn't matter to me, or I'm this ethnicity, so this doesn't matter. And they attach themselves to, their ethnicity more than as a whole, how is Ethiopia? And, how can I look at, for example, if you're an Amara person, how can I look at an Oromo person and see the struggles they went through? As an Oromo person, how can I look at the struggles that Amara people went through? And it's hard for them to do that because, again, they don't know a lot and they're scared, which is understandable, because when you don't know a lot, you're scared to defend yourself or defend your country because you don't know enough.
And it's also just to add on this, very sad of how rapidly things have changed with what Hewitt had mentioned, how we were talking about the phase from 2016 to 2018 and then from 2018 to 2020. I don't know if we could pull one flyer out that was part of the protest in 2016, where it was the northern of Ethiopia going out with a slogan reading, the blood of Oromo is the blood of Amara. And they're protesting for the brothers that are not dying in their city, but all the way to the south. That was just in 2016. And what happened between these 4 years, and we're not suggesting that everything happened or started now. Of course, that boil of hate has been boiling for almost the last 50 years. Things have been calculated against us, but you're right of how things have rapidly changed, and now we're calculated to only think within ethnicity, which is not even 100%. There's no such thing as just Amara or just Oromo. That's not what Ethiopian is all about, and all this at the end is based on lack of education. So good one. Hewitt, go ahead.
I think I like what you guys are saying. It's lack of education all around. It's not only Herman, like I mentioned, it's not only a lack of education of Ethiopia, but also a lack of education of the world, of America, right? For us to make a comment about trying to compare Black Lives Matter to what's happening in Ethiopia genuinely lacks a basic knowledge of what slavery was to the world, what it meant, and how much Black people suffered through it. For every slave that was kidnapped, one died before they got here, right? They worked in chains. They weren't allowed to get married. The women were used as basically to produce children to be more slaves, right? And they couldn't get away anywhere, right? Without the permission of their owners, basically. Their name was stripped away. Their culture was stripped away. Their language was stripped away. And everything they ever knew as human beings was stripped away and replaced by this mentality of a slave. Basically, you have an owner and you're not allowed to think outside of what that owner is going to think for you. And the Black Lives Matter matter is really built on that legacy, right? So we can't, it's like you guys said, this is a complete disregard to the movements in general. But also when we're talking about how our inability to really come up with our own analysis of understanding our culture, right? In our culture and our struggles. Even when we're talking about like colonization in the sense of Ethiopia, colonization in itself is a word used for Western colonizing African continents, right? African countries. So that's not even a word that we can use. So there's that continuation of trying to understand the Ethiopian struggle only through the Western scope, which we're still having a struggle with, that continues to perpetuate the miseducation that we do have. I agree with that. But how do we, in a sense of us trying to say, you know, let's be unbiased, right? Let's try to find information that's not biased from any side. How do I go about getting that information? Because I think when I have an enemy, if I say, you know, if you come to me, like you mentioned earlier with the Jewish Holocaust, right? They went and told them, like, your enemy is the Jewish, right? So then you don't have to sit and think about how to solve your own problem because you have already been given an enemy. And when we're already in that state of being in Ethiopia, when enemies have already been given by name, by address, right? Like we've been seeing, how do we move away from that and really make sure that we get out of the bias that we have, especially for those of us that live here and continue to perpetuate that idea outside of, you know, the education aspect? Where would we go about getting this information, and where have you been getting your information from to make sure that it's balanced and also be able to share it with your organization? Hermela or Bethlehem.
So like, if you don't mind, I just wanted to like quickly add on to what we were saying earlier. So as for like, you know, yeah, we said there's a lack of education and all of that, but I think also like what I would like to call out, and this is kind of a disappointment that I have on my end towards the community within the Western world, the Ethiopian American or the Ethiopian European youth is, you know, I think we're putting in a lot of time to research what is going on. What is going on within Ethiopia, and I mean, what is going on within the Black Lives Matter movement and all of these different things. I think it should be like each and every one of our individual responsibilities as well. I don't think it should be like, you know, you're pushed in order to go ahead and read on that topic or all these different things. I think it's a lot of like kind of, we forget where we're from. The reason, yeah, for example, like she mentioned earlier, people do come out and say, you know, if cops stop me, they're not going to ask whether I'm Ethiopian or this or that. They're just going to see me as Black. Yes, that's true. But I think what we also forget is the fact that the reason why you're Black is because you come from the land of Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. So coming from the land of Ethiopia is what made you Black to initially begin with. We're not saying do not support the Black Lives Matter movement, because again, we did say that we are advocates of it. But how do you forget where you initially rooted from to even become Black, if that makes any sense, and kind of like abandon the ground or the land that you came from and want to stand for something else? It's like trying to basically water down your neighbor's house that's caught on fire when your own house is caught on fire as well, which is, I think, very hypocritical, just because, you know, how am I gonna, if I'm not surviving, why would I go ahead and like, I'm also caught on fire, you know? If I don't go ahead and put the water down in my own house, how am I gonna go ahead and try to water down my neighbor's house? Because next thing you know, even when I walk out, I'm gonna be burnt in fire as well. So I think that's a big issue where what we don't realize is that just because we're in the Western world, we think that this issue isn't going to touch us, but it is, and that's what we've noticed. And you know, it is too late. Hopefully, it isn't too late, but you know, it took us this long to even for us to kind of be like, you know what, it doesn't matter how much backlash we get, we need to stand up for this, because who's going to do it if not us? You know, and who's gonna bring light to the matter if not us? And the youth, they need to wake up as to what's going on. This is your issue. You know, this is going to come and knock at your door, because we're seeing you've seen the video of the white guy getting beat up by, you know, certain people that have a kind of hate mentalities towards Ethiopia. And this thing is expanding, whether we like it or not, throughout the world. And you trying to not claim yourself under a certain category within this supposed ethnic kind of war going on in Ethiopia isn't going to save you from it, if that makes any sense. If you trying to disassociate yourself from what's going on isn't going to take you away from it, but rather just make you like a kind of a fish, that's just laying there, that doesn't know how to defend itself because now you don't even know your history or you don't know what to stand for. So I think it's very important that we address the fact that there is a big hypocrisy, and I don't want to really sugarcoat it. This matter is serious. So we're going to say there's a lack of education, but at the end of the day, whose job is it as college students, as individuals? It's our job to educate ourselves as to what's going on from the land we came from. Because again, we keep forgetting the reason why we're Black and we're standing for the Black Lives Matter movement is because we stem from the land of Ethiopia. And I think we definitely need to make a big point on that. Do you want to answer?
Beautifully said. Yeah.
And to answer your question about, sorry, your question was how do youths educate themselves, or I'm sorry?
How do we get the unbiased news that we would read, especially to see what's going on in Ethiopia in the day-to-day life? It might be news, even history.
It's really hard. I don't want to say, a lot of everything has, some form of bias. Even research. When you're doing research, there is human bias, and we're not gonna pretend there's one truth and this is the only truth and you're supposed to believe in the truth, but two truths can exist at once. For example, we can agree that the Oromo people have been suffering, but we can also agree that they were not alone in that suffering for the past 50 years. Those two truths can exist. So when you look at history, or when you look at what happened in the last 30, 40, 50, or 100 years, you don't have to have, one set of view of this is what it's going to happen, and this is the only person I'm going to read on, and that's one of the things we need to, stop and realize is that two truths can exist, or multiple truths of, can exist at the same time. Just because, someone said this, that doesn't mean the other thing doesn't, is not also true type of thing. And also for college students, if you go to your database in the library, there's a lot of books written by different historians where you can read upon. And all we ask is read as many as you can from different perspectives and make a judgment for yourself. And one of the things we want to hope to do for justice in Ethiopia is make that information digestible, because these days, social media and everything, everybody just wants information quickly. Yeah. Nobody wants to read a 50-page PDF about, about what happened in 1992 in Ethiopia, or like what happened in 1860 or something, And so making it digestible for everybody, because not everybody's going to be, interested in history, then that's fine. But just making sure before you speak up on this is what's happening, or this is what I think is happening, and these people are to blame, or this person is to blame. Look at, the different sources and judge for yourself, okay, this is what I think happens. And if you don't like reading, you can watch YouTube videos. There's different documentaries made by credible sources. And I also want to add, we need to start listening to our historians and our professors from Ethiopia, and stop listening to, and I'm not saying completely, but stop looking at white professors or white historians and the white Western media lens of what is happening in Ethiopia or what happened in Ethiopia. Because if we remember in Adwa, for example, the first thing they said was that Minilik was white because there's no way a Black nation can defeat, a Western one. And so a lot of the Western lens will probably be, a bias, because of course, historically they want to suppress Black history and Black, voices. And so we need to start listening to the professors and the historians in our home country who, lived it. They've wrote about it. They have research, and all of those people, especially right now, we urge you, and there's a lot of professors and historians, to please, help us and to start speaking up and making your work available in any way you can. And our future project is to have a podcast, to have all of these professors and historians talk to the youth, no one in the middle, no one with a political affiliation in the middle, someone who, talks about the things that are happening in Ethiopia, whether it's during past history, Haile Selassie or whatever, or during current times or during the last 30 years. So we want to have those kind of conversations with those people, because we haven't heard them. We've been always listening to, the Western media, and that's why we want to stop, is to try to listen to our own people who've spoken about this for a very long time, who have been jailed, who have been arrested, who have been silenced, journalists, activists, and we want to listen to them in terms of what do you think is happening, but also people with credible, people who studied this, not just someone who goes on the internet and rants, but someone who, has a degree, who studied it, and we want to hear all of them. We want to hear all of them. And that's one of the things that we need to push for, and the youth can help us on that, and anybody who supports this movement, help us push that for that, because we demand answers for what was our history and what is what happened, so we can determine our future, because we're going to be in charge. Our generation is going to be in charge.
Also, what I would like to add on there is, I mentioned this on the Amharic interview as well, and I think a couple of times before that too, is there's a bookstore called Sankofa, for example. It's in DC next to Howard University. I came across that place, I believe, in 11th grade. I had a mentor that used to take us there, and the place, it's like a small little cafe-ish place where it's like a library slash library as well, and it has a lot of credible books that you can read the history of Ethiopia on. And like she said, of course, kind of lean more towards the Ethiopian historians, rather than the whites and the Western side. But at Sankofa, actually, there's a lot of books written by white professors as well that have lived in Ethiopia, lived through Ottawa, lived through all these different wars, and Sankofa. Then and yeah, they've lived through the wars and all these different things. So whatever they say really is like not even biased, and I would stand by that, because again, it's an amazing place to go to. You would really love the African kind of setting that it has. You not only would be proud to be Ethiopian because it's Ethiopian owned, but also like a lot of Black people tend to spend time there. And you see, I don't know, I think I really love that place just because it has a very inviting, kind of prideful African environment there. So you would most definitely find really good books there for the youth. They are very interesting. They are very credible. And I would most definitely give that place a shot. Go look at it. Go find yourself a couple of books to look at. And I think you should find the answers that you need.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll definitely go ahead and check that out. One thing you guys said that really stood out is, there's going to be bias in everything. And when I do my research and when I look up things, the way I choose it, you could sense when someone talks about Ethiopians, how they talk about them, right? If one group has to be bigger than the other group, if one group has to be better than the other group, or if one group has to be the one that's always being oppressed, right? You can kind of sense that maybe there's a different opinion that you want to seek, right? And also be really cautious of who's saying what, like you guys said. It's really been a powerful tool for me to just really understand like what's going on in Ethiopia, and also take everything a little bit. Something my professor used to say that I really loved is, you can read about anything you want to read. You could understand anything that is written, right? We're all educated, especially if you're here and you're going to college. But pity's a man that doesn't have his own ideas, right? If I'm listening to one specific media, or if I'm reading one specific book, and I take that to be my religion, I take that to be my, the truth and the only truth, and no other truth can exist. And that really shows how unfortunate our education has been, and how set and fixed our mindset is. And there's just really difficult for us to move from there. So to just kind of, for us to continue to challenge our own limitations and our own understandings when we take up new information, at least for me, has been a really powerful awakening as far as studying about Ethiopia. And Karim, if you have anything to add to this.
Yeah, thank you, Hewitt. Again, one thing that really touched me with Bethlehem, you mentioned about how we often listen or think that everything that comes out of like white people history, or what they say, is more important or more true than what we say. It's the unfortunate truth, and you hit it right well. And when we look at, if we honestly can compare Black Lives Matter or the movement, like what African Americans that went through in the United States for 400 years, is that inferiority and superiority mindset, where they are told again, like for 400 years, that white mindset, or not only the economically or by power, but by intellect, that white are superior than black. That's not only in it didn't start in the United States, but it's the white supremacy was able to do that around the world, and they tried to do that in Ethiopia. They had failed because of King Menelik, because of our fathers, but unfortunately, because this kind of battle cannot be won by just one battle in Adwa, that mindset has come and actually affected us as well. For example, like, who has not been told not to hang out with Tukur Sawich, or Tukur Sawich meaning they're not good for you, or Nechochuko, and then the connotation we give. We've all also been enslaved by this kind of mindset. That's the things that needs to change, starting with our the conversations that we're having at home as well. This also comes from that mindset that, hey, I'm greater than you, kind of system that has taken us. So it starts from that, and which also leads me to another question. You guys could also if you have anything to say, you could add on to that. We could always fight back with what's going on the ground, but sometimes, again, this is speaking from the Western aspect of it. For example, the misinformation that's coming from not like local or regular medias, but organizations like Amnesty, that's mostly trusted, and whatever comes out in Amnesty, right, we believe it right away. One thing that they had misled people, after 280 people right now have been confirmed that mostly Christian Orthodox that have been brutally murdered, viciously murdered. When they wrote an article about that, or when they on their news they wrote quoting them. I don't know if we could be able to share it here, but this is quoting them. They said intercommunal violence erupted as Oromos protested for justice, but later on they removed it, which is a good sign. That, and then they apologized. So how can we we could always again fight with what's going on around us, but how can we also address these kind of issues when it comes to actually well organized and well known organizations or news outlets like Amnesty? What do you guys have been doing in your movement to answer these questions, or to enlighten them as well?
So that's actually a very good question. We actually, I don't know if you saw, and you just mentioned Amnesty did post that. So what we've been doing is basically ever since we started our movement, every time we see kind of news big, especially platforms, news outlets, all these different things putting out incorrect information, what we've been doing is drafting an email that we make it into a link, and basically on that email we explain, like, we give links as to like facts of what we're saying, all these different things, explain what is actually going on with picture evidence, video evidence, as well as kind of sources to what we're saying being credible, and all, like, a lot of things, quite a long explanation.
There's a bit of cut off again. They will come back. Hewitt, you wanna?
Did it?
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምብኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ infomedia@gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for all of you that have tuned in as we have been with our sister Hermela and Bethlehem from Justice and Peace for Ethiopia movement. And we've been having a really great, indulging conversation with them. We are back. I don't know if we have them online. Yes, we do. Hermela, you want to continue?
Are we good?
We can hear you now. Go ahead. So you were talking about amnesty and the things that they were. I think you're muted.
Adebabay Media kan hunduma keenya kan taate waa'ee Itoophiyaa Adebabay irratti ni gabaasa. Adebabayin kan hundumaati. kan hunduma keenya kan taate waa'ee Itoophiyaa Adebabay irratti ni gabaasa. Peejii Feesbuukii Adebabay Miidiyaaf chaanaalii yuutuubii keenya irratti nu hordofaa. Adebabay Miidiyaa.
Brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us again. We apologize for the little technical difficulty we're having. I believe it is because our sister Hermela and Bethlehem are now using their internet from college dorm, and we know how the college dorms are with the internet, right? With the network.
Absolutely. Until they join us, maybe Diagon, if we could continue that conversation about Amnesty International. I think the problem that I had with that video mostly was because we had this conversation about whether or not we could call what's going on in Ethiopia a conflict, or if we could actually go ahead and call it a genocide, as it is outlined as a definition of genocide outlined by the UN. And that issue of the media continuing to call what's been going on a conflict is what the issue is for me, especially with that report that came out, is because if someone comes to my house, and as Obang has put out, everyone that's been either killed or houses burned down or abused by what happened about 50 days ago now did not necessarily happen while they were on the road, right? This happened in their houses. People showed up to their houses, burned down their belongings, killed some of their family members. Sometimes they weren't even allowed to bury them because supposedly they don't belong there, right? When we're talking about that, it's really disheartening to continue to call that a conflict, right? If someone does that to me in this country, you would not call that a conflict, but we are having a problem really extending that same courtesy to people that are currently sheltering within a church that don't have any change of clothes from whatever 50 days ago, leaving their houses. They don't know where the next meal is going to come, and for us to call that a conflict is very problematic to me. But I think Hermela and Bethlehem were telling us also what they've been doing about these kind of news releases from the organizational standpoint, if we head them back now.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up what I was saying earlier, basically for Amnesty, the reason why it was removed is we created an email, and not only that, we've been doing this with other news sources and media sources as well. We create an email kind of explaining information as to what's going on in Ethiopia, what the real fact is, attaching sources, kind of liable sources on the email as well, and then creating a draft and putting it into a link where anybody that wants to kind of push for the truth to come out instead will just go in. All they have to do is just put in their email address on the top. Everything else is drafted for them, and then all they have to do is send that email. So we've been sending mass email to Amnesty. Hundreds of people have, I'm sure thousands at this point actually, have been sending that email to them, and that's the reason why they actually took it down. If you said that they took it down, that you saw, so was our work as well. And not only us, we've been doing this a lot, not only with this source, again, with multiple others. And then as for what you just said, I'll start off on it, and then Beatty will continue it as well.
Sorry, I just want to add to what you said. And also one of the things we've been doing for these organizations is that a lot of these Western or, international organizations, they rarely speak up right when issue happens. They're always late. Like for Rwanda, 100 days, within 100 days, 8 million people died, and the world was silent. Human rights organizations were late, and signs were there. Same with Ethiopia. The signs are, creeping, and they're there. And like you said, the 10 steps to genocide. Like we saw that as a board, we saw that with other people, and they're like, this looks like this is one of those steps, and it's getting near. And they always tend to ignore it because a lot of the Western media like to label every African problem, oh, it's just ethnicity problem, oh, it's a poverty problem. And they never put the same research, the same efforts that they would, about any other white countries. And that's what's happening now, where they'll get one source, from one person who's their representative for Ethiopia. They will post whatever, and then, and they would release it without a second thought, without without realizing how many lives can be at stake. With genocide, any news or any, there was a radio station actually that started in Rwanda. It was just one radio station announcement that started all these, deaths. And with just one, release of news, huge things can happen. And they don't realize that that's really important because, like you said, a lot of, these are very credible and very, big organizations and human rights, news medias. And when they say something, a lot of people, of course, even myself, I would trust it because obviously, how would they lie or why would they? And they're human rights, so of course they're telling the truth. But there's never been, like us, where a human rights in terms of that speaks for Ethiopia or like that focuses on it from the Ethiopian lens of what is happening. This is not just two ethnicities fighting. This is, a deeper issue that has been overlooked, and we make sure we tell them that. And I want to add that when we email them or when we when some of our followers or the people who were part of the movement, when they tag them into videos of like where there are people crying about their parents or their friends or their, brothers and sisters who died, we want to show the stories because there's no way you will deny a human story. A human story is really important, and we make sure we put those human stories first. It's really easy for anyone to come on, any television or whatever and post a picture and say this person died because of this, and everybody can believe it. But a human story is something that you can't deny, and these people are speaking out, and some are being threatened, and we know that. And we show that to these big organizations because you can't deny the facts that, if someone says I lost my mother, my father, my brother, my sister due to ethnic violence, you can't deny them because it happened to them. It's something they're forced to look at, and we make sure we tell the stories of those people instead of, giving them another source sometimes because they'll just dismiss that too. But giving them human stories will make them realize that, talk about the deaths. And the reason we have problem with Amnesty or like in terms of what they reported or other news organizations is not the fact that they're talking about the Oromo protest, but they're ignoring the violence that is happening by extremists. You can talk about both. You can say that there was a protest, but in this Shashamene, RC, in these regions, there were, people who were killed because of their ethnicity, because of their religion, and to dismiss the deaths of the innocent people and to make it seem as though it does not exist is the first step to genocide, is denying what's happening. First, it's 80 in October. Now it's, 200 something. What, are we going to wait for more? And we don't want to do that, so we show them ahead of time, this is what's happening, and we've been trying to do that as best as we can. And a lot of people have commented under our social media posts to tagging them, emailing them, and things like that for them to look at the deaths and the innocent people that are being targeted because of their identity.
ወንድሜን እኔ በግልጽ ያጣሁት በሃይማኖቱ ኦርቶዶክስ ክርስቲያን ስለሆነ ወንድሜ ታረደው መንግስት ሊደግፈን ሊረዳ ጥበቃ ሊደረግልን ይችላል አሁንም እየተወደለተልን ነው መኖራችን ማን ነው የሚያውቀው ልንከበብ ልንታጀብ ልንጠበቅ ይገባል። ድምጼን አሁንም እንዲህ ብዬ አሰማለሁ። ስንት ብዙ እዚህ ውስጥ ያሉት እንዳለ የተጎዳ ህብረተሰብ ነው ያለው። እኔ እነሱ የኔ ናቸው። ሁሉንም ወንድም የወንድሞቼም የአባቶቼም የሞቱት የዘመድ የወገኖቼ ነው ንብረት የተቃጠለው።
የኔ አባት በክርስትናው ነው የሞተው ማለት እችላለሁ። ቤተክርስቲያን ትሰራለ፣ ወጣቶችን ታደራጃለ፣ የክርስትና ባንዲራ እንዲወደስ ታረጋለ፣ ወጣቶችን ታደራጃለ በሚል ከዚህ በፊት በእምነቱ ላይ ብዙ ጊዜ ዛቻና መፈክር ያደርጉበት ነበር። መምህር ነው፣ የስነ ዜጋ መምህር ናቸው። 30 ዓመት ያገለገለ መምህር ነው። የእድሜ ኩያዬ ማለት ነው።
Hermela, if you could translate this video for us, and if you could add on to it a little bit as well.
Yeah. So that was somebody crying out saying that the reason why their family member was killed was simply because they were Orthodox Christian, and you know they explained and like how they were mourning their deaths and that even they were at risk of dying. Just simply because they were from that religion, and not only that, but they also tried to come in and tell them to stop killing their family members. So this is just a simple show of this matter has gone out of you know, ethnicity basis only and gone to religion as well. That is why on our mission statement, you know, we state that we're an organization that is not only against ethnic violence but also religious based violence, because we do acknowledge that not only is there violence happening in Ethiopia due to people being from different ethnic groups, but rather also the fact that, you know, they're from religious groups as well. And this again is a big sign of this situation being a genocide. And you asked saying kind of, you know, that you've been hearing terms kind of demeaning that what's going on in Ethiopia into calling it a conflict instead of a genocide. And I think this is what Rwanda faced as well. If we look back at it, it's kind of situations like this where we kind of simplify what's going on and try to deny the seriousness of the matter that causes us to get to a greater damage or collateral situation of this situation. I think another thing I would like to add on there is not only are they calling it conflict, but they're also using terms such as neftenga to simplify that, like who they're killing, or kind of like label them as something less than human. So I think that's what happened in Rwanda as well, where they use the term cockroaches in order to kill people. So basically what they would do would be like, oh, go kill these cockroaches, this many cockroaches were dead, kind of things like that, where in this matter, I think it's a method where they make you forget that who you're killing is not only as not human, but rather just like this enemy that you're against. And that's what's happening in Ethiopia right now. Again, on the 10 steps to genocide, we are seeing that they're using terms to simplify who they're killing and the people that are dying by using the term neftenga. To, I think, like define it for the people that don't know what neftenga means. Neftenga, neft is a type of gun. It's a type of rifle. And basically neftenga would be the person that's holding that gun. And that term hasn't, as far as we know, it hasn't been used in any negative way in the past, but rather, you know, there's neftengas not only from the Amhara ethnic group, but also like the Oromia ethnic group, Gurage, like Walaita, all these different, you know, variety of ethnic groups in Ethiopia, because you know, this term isn't negative. It just means somebody that's like strong and is a fighter. So but they've kind of negativized the term to make it, you know, something that you use against people that you don't like, or a group of people that you just want to see as less than human. So I think that's a very big show that this indeed is a genocide, and we can't deny that, because us denying calling it a genocide is the first step of, like Becky just said, of what a genocide is. Again, also a second term would be the fact that they're using terms to simplify, classifications to label certain people as less than human, just so that you don't know what the collateral damage you're creating is. And I think it's kind of situations like this that kind of build up to where do we stand, you know? We need to recognize what's happening before it's too late. Again, over 800 million 800,000 people died in Rwanda in the first million, yeah, in the first 100 days, and that was a million people. So I think it's a lot of people. Again, not I think it actually is a lot of people. That's more than Addis Ababa itself, if I'm correct, right? So imagine, I think to kind of visualize it for people, imagine everybody in Addis Ababa dying. So it's not a simple matter. It's not something we're just gonna ignore and be like, oh, this is a conflict between Oromia and Amara or this and that. It's not. It's a conflict that, because in this damage, in this over 280 people that died, it's not just Amaras that died, it's not just Oromia people that died, but also Gurages, all these Dabub, all these different ethnic groups as well. So I think the sooner we recognize what's happening and admit to the fact that this is indeed serious.
Yeah, I think we're having a bit of a problem with their video, but our technical team is going to show us a vigil that they had hosted about a few days ago, I think about 4 days ago, for the victims of Shashamene, Arisi, and Zuwai. And then we'll go back to the conversation of why they went ahead and hosted this vigil. So stay with us and watch this video with us. I saw Hermila when one of the speeches he gave on this one was that holding a vigil for people that have died should not be political in that sense. What did you mean by that? If you could explain that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so this, I think, again, it comes back to how I just said, we're simplifying it so much that we're just seeing this whole situation as something that's happening to people, to like something that's less than human. So this comes to a matter of like, I think, sadly, we've come to a point where over 280 people died, yeah, but people have decided to hold on to their political views right now as to like, oh, I support Abiy. No, I don't support Abiy. No, I do support this. I don't support that. And we've forgotten that it's human lives, 280 in number, plus actually human lives that are dying, like innocent people over nothing, over just being from a specific ethnic group, over being from a specific religion, which is, I think we've forgotten that this is, these are like people's brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, children that are dying. And for once, our kind of agenda throughout hosting this candlelight vigil was to bring to light that these are human lives that are being lost. I don't know why we're simplifying it so much, why we've decided to politicize the movement and be like, oh, I don't want to come out and speak against what happened just because I support Abiy, or because that's going to somehow put the blame towards the government and this and that. But I think we're forgetting the main aspect, that it's humans that are dying. And at least for that vigil, what we were trying to present or like reflect was, push away whatever you're thinking right now. You want to be this supporter, you want to be that supporter, you want to be TPLF, you want to be this and that. Forget that. As one human, as an Ethiopian, forget even Ethiopian, as a human being, some other human being that was innocent got killed. So why aren't we putting our kind of like individualized political mindsets aside and standing together to mourn family members that were lost? And, surprisingly and sadly, also, after we spoke out and hosted it towards the end, actually, I don't know if you got that part of the video, we actually had somebody that was there that was present at the candlelight vigil, that I was actually passing by. We were kind of finalizing the event, and I was passing by, so he stops me and he's like, thank you guys for what you're doing. He was like, I personally really appreciate you guys. And, and then in Ethiopia, I would like to say thank you. And then he starts tearing up and he starts crying. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So all of a sudden he tells me, I lost my mother to this. my mother was killed because of this past conflict within these past couple of weeks. And, nobody has been amplifying that. Nobody stood there to stand for their lives, to mourn their deaths, but rather has like made it a political situation. And that's, I think, when the moment where we all kind of realized that, what we're doing, it has a much bigger purpose than us. We even brought him up to speak, and he told his story as to the fact that his mother was killed due to this conflict, due to this ethnic conflict, ethno-religious conflict. And this is real. This is, I think we're all, we've decided to politicize it until it knocks on each and every individual doors of ours. And I don't think that's, a smart way to move right now, just because I'm sure we all do have family members in Ethiopia. And how long are we going to sit here making this a personalized or individualized matter when, it's humans' lives that are being lost? And when are we going to wake up to realize that, hey, it's people that are dying? When are we going to say, let's put a stop to this? Let's not let this happen anymore. So I think kind of the reason why we hosted it was to bring light to the matter and to the fact that it's humans that are being lost, and let's not kind of politicize what's happening. And that's what I meant by saying that during the speech as well.
Yeah. Also, I was wondering, from the people you've been able to talk to in the last few weeks that you've been in this, I guess in the last few months you've been part of this movement, have you noticed a sense of this happens again, right? This will happen again, or that sense of like normalizing these random killings of, few dozen people, now a few hundred people at a time, and just kind of being like, I don't want to put my voice in here because it will happen again. It's just becoming a norm in Ethiopia. Have you noticed that sense of defeat from the people that you've talked to?
In the beginning, when we first started, when a lot of people, the reason they even spoke up and we started this movement was because it seemed like nobody cared. If you look at any, during that time, I remember vividly during July, early July, it was like everybody was just going about their day. And it just felt so, it was scary because it felt like nobody, it felt like, I read a lot of stuff where, people ignore genocides, people ignore, killings, but you never realize like the reality of that until it happens. And it just seems like nobody cared. I remember during October when, everybody started talking about, 80 plus people died, that, everybody was kind of silent. Now it's much more bigger. The voices are bigger. And that's what gives us a little bit of hope, is more people are speaking out. But what's scary is, did you speak up because the death toll increased? Or did you speak up because, you finally said even one human life because of this is enough? And there are people who are reluctant still, and we're speaking to a lot of people who are still, saying, I'm going to be neutral about this, or I'm not going to talk about this because, I'm from this ethnicity, or things like that. And it's kind of hard to listen to because they've taken away, the human aspect of, which is why we decided to be a human rights organization or movement. They took away that, and they're looking at it from a lens of, this might happen again, but like, that's Ethiopia, there's always things going on, Africa, there's always stuff that happens, whatever type of tone. And it is present, and we've seen it with our, friends our age and even older. I've spoken to older people who are like, yeah, things like this happen, and it seems very dismissive. But what we, people who are part of the movement, people who started the movement, and people who are on the board, and people like us, what we refuse to hear is this normalcy of making it okay that people are dying because of their ethnicity, because the moment we give in is the moment, so it's over. And so I will say to anyone, if you have a family member or a friend who's reluctant about talking, talk to them, because the more people that are going to speak up about this, the more we will see change. And so definitely, please do not just stay quiet and ignore this, because we don't want the number to be higher. I like one of my favorite quotes from the Jews genocide that happened is, I'm kind of reiterating, but first they come for the Jews, then I stayed silent, then they come for the Blacks, then they come for the Muslims, and I stayed quiet, then they come for me. And if you don't care about other human lives, know that the door is going to be knocking on you soon. And so it's so yeah, I would like to conclude with that quote. I guess.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I think like everything she said was perfect. You know, there is a pretty big kind of like aspect of where, like she explained as well, we do see a lot of people kind of dismissing it, saying like, oh, you know, this is Ethiopia, this is Africa, it happens. But this is very wrong, honestly, because especially saying like, oh, this is Ethiopia, you do especially forget even like, you know, like African Americans or all these different things. As an Ethiopian person, when you're saying this is Ethiopia, I think we're forgetting the fact that you yourself are Ethiopian. Your whole family themselves are Ethiopian. So when you're saying like, oh, you know, this is Ethiopia, you're saying, oh, like, it's fine. My family is fine too. So I think that's very like, I don't think people realize what they're saying when they say it, because when you're simplifying it to say like, oh, it's just Ethiopians, your parents are Ethiopians, your family members are Ethiopians, you yourself are Ethiopian. So if we're simplifying it as like, oh, it's just Ethiopia, and again, this matter has, oh, we might have been like, oh, you know, it's staying in Ethiopia, but no, we've seen that video where the white person, not even that, I've explained on the last kind of interview as well, where I told you guys how a guy that we know of that was very active about what was going on, like very kind of vocal about what was happening in Ethiopia. People saw him on social media. This is in Seattle. People saw him on social media from the other side, and went ahead and attacked his mother. So, and this is in the United States of America, where we say, oh, there's law, oh, there's this or there's that, and this won't touch me because I'm in the Western world. That is not true. You got to understand that, like, you know, the less people it is speaking up about this, yes, there will be a lot of attack. But again, if we're a lot standing up for the country, for human rights, A, this wouldn't happen where you would have to fear speaking up, but B, you got to understand, just simply for being Ethiopian, the attack is going to spread even more the more we're quiet about it. And the way I believe in this in my whole board as well is, even if, like, yes, there might be another round, which we do fear, you know, the way everything is going, it seems like there might be, and there may be. But even if we're, like, by putting out this voice out there, by putting out this awareness as to what is going on, even if we're preventing one person's death, I think that is a lot, because one soul does matter that much. If, you know, even if it's just one person, if 100 people had to die and one person was saved because of the voice we made, then so be it. Because that one person will double into 2, then double into 4, 8, and kind of continue on that basis, the more we're vocal about what's happening. So sitting down, waiting for the next president to be like, oh, you know, maybe we don't know what's going to happen with Ethiopia. Like, we'll see, like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. But how are you not going to want to be at least a part of the change that's going to help even save one person's life? So just kind of emphasize on that.
I think I really like that concept of, because he has no limits, right? Today if I hate you, tomorrow I'm going to find someone else to hate. So I really like that. But along with that, then how do we move forward, right? How do we move away from this narrative of talking about each other and talk to each other, as Obang would say? What's the best way for us to go about that, do you guys think?
I just want to say we do really love Obang, and personally, I really look up to him. He fought for Gambela people, and he's proud Ethiopian, and we are inspired by him. And for that quote, I say he's definitely correct. And the first step to talk to each other and not about each other, like I said, is to realize that when someone is telling you about the struggles they went through or what they think is true, you know, what their truth is, to understand that their truth can exist, but so can yours. And that's one of the things that a lot of times when we have discussions with people who are who don't agree with the movement or who have questions about it, and they approach us, well, how come you're not talking about this ethnicity? Because this happened to my ethnicity. And we, a lot of times, a lot of us, all of the board, and we say, yes, that is true. And we agree that, you know, if you have your facts and, you know, personal stories and things like that, yes, that is true, but so can this be. And to realize that when you talk to each other, truth can exist at once, and it's not a competition between, you know, this person who's more oppressed than this person. because when we realize that we've all been marginalized and we've been silenced and we've been killed because of our identity, the more we can look at who is the source of it all, which is the system that was built to divide us into ethnicities and that caused all this chaos. But so first, to talk to each other, you need to realize two truths can exist at once when you talk to people. And if you disagree with them in terms of the technicalities or the historical aspect, you have to understand that their pain and their the things they're saying, that the stories they have is true to them, and you have to understand that. And at the same time, when you listen to other people, after you tell your own story, listen to the others and stop dismissing it because it doesn't fit to your narrative about what is happening in Ethiopia. And I think that's the most important thing I would say.
Yeah, I think creating discussion spaces is most definitely kind of the important thing in this matter. Educate people around you. Honestly, I think that like for me, growing up especially, I've the way like people perceive me is I can meet you today. We can be random strangers, and automatically I would love to get into like serious topics. It's not even like honestly anything that's like of like an important hold in the world. I love getting into. So I think we should all make a habit of that as to like let's not always have like useless discussions. Yeah, I'm young, she's young. Yeah, we're college students. We do have our fun time, but I think like let's all kind of like work towards being like better human beings as a whole, like educated human beings. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, because you went through college or because you got your master's or whatever it is. Just education, I don't think is like limited to like the paperwork that you get, but rather like expanding the way you think. Having like an open mindset as to what is going on, kind of trying to think out the box that you're being set in, that you're being set in like with what your parents told you or where your family members are telling you, but rather like do your research, and in that way, I think kind of like having important conversations such as like what is going on, what do you think, like let's discuss about it. If we don't agree, then let's come to terms on how we can come to common ground as to what we think is a solution. I think kind of discussions is very important. And also I've emphasized this on my other interview as well, is I think as Ethiopians, we should all make it our priority to learn our alphabets and our Amharic. I cannot emphasize this enough because, this is who we are. This is a part of us. This is one of the biggest part of us as Ethiopians. And this is most definitely, that's the way we can read the different articles, the books from back then, years and years ago that were written. The only way we can kind of go through all of that and be able to analyze and evaluate what's actually happening is by knowing and speaking the language. And I think teach yourself. It's never too late. I promise you. You can be a 25-year-old that grew up in the U.S., a 25-year-old that grew up in, I'm going to mention Germany and in Europe, because Germany has like an odd way where they barely speak English. Forget Amharic. But educate yourself. You don't necessarily I think we all go out of our way just because, and that's a whole other topic, but we all go out of our way to learn English. Just because even if it's in Ethiopia, in the Western, like in the European countries, China, wherever you go, English has been seen as this like kind of mother language of all languages. And learn your language, learn your Amharic, and then even if you can go beyond that, learn other ethnic group languages, Orominya, Guragenya, Adebabay, all these different languages. Learn them. It's our pride and joy. I promise you, nobody will ever call you out for speaking all these different languages, but rather appreciate you for it, because I think language, yes, is a communication means, but it's also a way for you to expand your knowledge, because that way you'll be able to read different sources, understand different kind of aspects of things that are going on. So for sure, go ahead, learn your language. That is something I would really love to emphasize on.
And I want to add that when you hear us tell you and a lot of the people who are part of this movement, you should read this, you're not educated, you don't know enough. It seems like we know everything, and I want to reiterate, we do not know everything, and we're still learning. And one way to communicate and to talk to each other is to admit you don't know. And there are a lot of information I didn't know that I'm still learning, and we're still learning. And it's okay to admit you don't know. And that's just, the only way to start a conversation is to just admit that you don't know someone's struggle, you don't know someone's story, you don't know someone's past, or you don't know some parts of history and things like that. And so we're still college students. A lot of our board members are college students or graduating or about to. And a lot of the people who are part of the movement are in high school, middle school. So by all means, we don't know everything. And the only thing we're saying is we're open to learn, and we want to learn, and we're open to be open-minded, and we are open-minded. But as for learning, it's a process, and we're still doing it. And we don't want to, seem like everybody else is not listening, not educated, and we are type of rhetoric. Because I truly believe the people who are, in Qatar, and our mothers and our fathers who've lived through TPLF, Derg, and Haile Selassie, things like that. Those people have a lot more knowledge than we give them credit for, and we should listen to that and be open-minded.
Very interesting that you guys mentioned about the alphabet. Something I wanted to say with Hirmila, you mentioned Naftanya, the terminology of use when they insult. For example, in Rwanda they used cockroach, and here they use Naftanya before they kill you. Our problem starts not only with the history, but even with terminology. We were talking about this yesterday with my brother Dr. Gizal, of how our problem starts with terminology, like even the words. First, it starts with not knowing our history, of course, and the alphabets, which brings down to not understanding even the words that we're using. For example, Naftanya is basically in English to bear arms. And we all know how the United States, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms is like almost religion to them. So basically the United States is Naftanya. And everyone that believes in that or the government is Naftanya. But when it comes to Rwanda, even though no insult has no justification, of course, but when they call them cockroaches, they're trying to say that they are inhuman or less than human, right? But when it comes to the terminology that our killers are using, even with the terminology, they don't make sense. How is a 3-year-old child that they slaughter, a Christian 3-year-old child, a Naftanya? How is it all those videos that you guys have seen, all those displaced little children and mothers that have never even have ever seen a gun in their lives, how are they Naftanya? So it starts with their terminology. And again, bihir, the word bihir, even though this is again another maybe a conversation for next time, when we say Gzia bihir, bihir is a Giz word, and we say Gzia bihir, Lord of the universe. So bihir is a country or universe or a nation. It doesn't make sense, but we've given it to ethnicity. So it starts with the terminology. We need to start challenging those that are killing us, not only with the history distortion, but they don't even know the language they're speaking of. They don't, the terminology they're using is wrong. And these are so-called doctors and professors that are not even, they don't even know what they're talking about. So it starts from that. And it's really interesting that you guys had mentioned that. Hewitt, is it okay to go to the next question, or if you guys want to add to anything? But what I wanted to ask is, coming back to the organization that you guys are leading now, we've heard that you have been rapidly growing, which is a great thing, and this is why we're having this conversation because everybody needs to support you guys, and we need to be part of this. We've heard that you've been expanding around the states and that you've been having branches. Talk a little bit about your expansion and how we could help, and how those that are viewing this from home, whether it's the parents and the youth, how they could be involved from within their state. Or is it just this thing only in DC, which is not, I've heard it's around the states, right? So how can we be part of it? And talk a little bit about your expansion.
So kind of like, I'll start briefly and then Beti will continue on. So basically right now, yes, we are based in the DMV, but we do have, people on our board that are in Canada as well as Australia. That's kind of like international wise that we're speaking even beyond state wise. So as for like, how people can help, we would love for you guys to go ahead and message us, whether on Facebook or Instagram. We'll go ahead and promote our pages as well. For Instagram, for example, it's going to be JP4 Ethiopia. And then Facebook will be Justice and Peace for Ethiopia. And then Twitter as well, JP4 Ethiopia. So, go ahead and message us on these, on our pages. And we do, for example, for people that want to be members, for parents that are watching this, for your children, if you want them to get involved. And then for even the youth that's watching this, we do have a form that you would fill out, just because, I've explained this on the last interview as well. There's a lot of like people that come with mindsets that pretend to be who they're not, and that pretend to want to be a part of us, but rather they're trying to get in and get information and all these different things. So we do have a form that you're going to fill out if you want to be an official member. You're going to go ahead, fill that form out, and we have categories as to how you can help out, how you can contribute to the movement. So people, you don't have to be like that specific branch that you pick. That doesn't need to be your major in college or anything, because we said we have middle school and high schoolers as well. But whatever you think you'll be able to help in with your best ability. We have like a tech group, for example, grammar and like editing group. We have a social media team, historian team, legal team. So all these different things, whatever you think you can help out with, you go ahead, sign that form. We'll do a background check on you, again, just to secure our information and keep it tight. And then once you go ahead and get that signed up, we'll get you enrolled. You can help out with everything that we ask you with. And yeah, I think that way we'll be able to expand the movement, not only within the DMV, but also, or not even just within the US, but hopefully make this an international Ethiopian-based humanitarian movement.
I also want to add that we have different events coming up, and we've had events like the Candlelight, like Real Life. As you said, right now it's in the DMV, but people from Ohio, Seattle, Texas have reached out to us wanting to start their own chapter there. And as we wrap up our constitution, we will have a process where if one individual with a group of people want to start their own, chapter in their home state or home country, we want to make that happen. And our goal is also to have, we have also speak to and work with Ethiopians back home who are there live and know what's happening, youths like us. So yeah, like she said, reach out to us with our email also, Peace for Ethiopia with AA, 4 as number 4 at gmail.com. And this Saturday, we will have a town hall with Obeng and Nati M, hosted by the State of the Horn. It's going to be discussing the prompt, how do we address the various plights in Ethiopia without diluting each other's voices? And Hermela will be representing Justice and Peace for Ethiopia, and she'll be answering questions about who are we, how did we start, what are our mission, what are our goals, what are our basically outlining what we have as constitution and what we hope to see in the future for our generation and Ethiopia and things like that. So please tune in. We'll be on YouTube, and you can also sign up on the Zoom link. Zoom link that is located in the poster below. Also, if you go to any of our bios and click it, that will be there. The Zoom limit is very like it's 100, I think. So it's probably
full by now. But if there's space, go ahead and try to get in. And just because if you are a part of the Zoom, that way we'll be able to communicate with you. You'll be sending us direct questions and things of that sort. But Obang is one of the guest speakers. I'm going to be representing Justice and Peace for Ethiopia, and we're going to have a third speaker called Nate. So hopefully, yeah, that should be an interesting and broad conversation that we're going to have as to how are we going to be able to move forward. And you'll see on the comment section, I'm sure there will be a lot of people from Kero representatives and the Oromia protest leaders and all these different things. I'm sure we'll be on there on the comment section trying to ask questions, and hopefully we'll be able to present not only us and our movement, but also what Ethiopia's real values are and what Ethiopia stands for, defending no types of ethnic division, and also defending their religious based kind of division that is on the edge of happening.
And this basically, answers Obeng's question of how do we hear each other without silencing each other, at each other. And these are the questions that we hope we're going to be talking about on the Zoom. And so please join us on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And the other times are written on the poster as well.
You'll see it on all of our pages. We've went ahead and promoted it there. And again, yeah, try to sign up for the Zoom link. If that's not full, if not, it will be streaming on YouTube as well.
That's State of the Horn.
So this will be hosted by your organization, right?
No, it's hosted by an organization called State of the Horn. It's new, and it started similarly, like during the same time as us, to basically give a platform for all voices and trying to understand, like, what are the Oromo, protests are saying, what are the, people who are,
defending Ethiopia and all of that,
and things like that. They're trying to hear.
They had another session where they had like the Kero representatives speak with like somebody that was supposedly neutral and all of that, and they had a conversation as to like what they thought was going on, what their ideology was, why. They also mentioned saying they didn't want it to be called a genocide and all these different things. So I think this is supposed to be our response to what they've said, not only a response to what they initially hosted, but also who we are, and again, like I said earlier, like what Ethiopia's values are, religiously, ethnically, and kind of as a country as a whole.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that with us. I know for sure I'll be there. So our viewers, if you have some time, it is Saturday. So go ahead and join, and we'll hear them out and see where the organization is heading to. To wrap things up here, what does being Ethiopian mean to you? If Bethlehem can answer this question, and Hermalai can pick that up.
Ethiopian means to me is a place where personally I grew up, and I have family from different ethnicities and different religions, and it's a place where people can be, are diverse and live, in a way where they celebrate each other's differences and their backgrounds, but also not forgetting the fact that at the end of the day, we are Ethiopians, and we are Ethiopians first, and not forgetting that. And it's a celebration of, our independence and our, I guess, like being Ethiopian is a celebration of our diversity. And growing up, that's what I saw, and that's what I remember in Addis, and that's what I, to this day, that's one of the things that make me always want to fight for, Ethiopia, is to remember those times. And I do want to say one of the reasons it gives me hope is that when we were looking and reading stories of genocide that was happening in July, or the killings, one of the things that really resonated with me was that neighbors were protecting their families, their neighbors, because they didn't, agree with the fact that nobody should be killed because they can't speak a certain language or they're not a certain religion. And that's what Ethiopianism means to me, is that I might be different. Our Muslim brothers protect Orthodox people, our Oromo brothers protecting Amaras and Tigris and other ethnicities, and that's what gives me hope, is those people getting saved by, and we know stories of people, and even personally, that were saved by their neighbors, and that's what gives me hope, and that's what Ethiopianism means to me.
I think she said it all almost, but being Ethiopian for me is, I think, like my greatest pride, really, simply because I'm proud to be Black, I'm proud to be African, but I think it's a lot of pride, really, for somebody that knows the true history of Ethiopia and the greatness of the country, kind of everything we've accomplished throughout history, disregarding whatever negative kind of aspects or sayings are thrown at the country and at the past leaders. I think despite all of that, for me, the fact that we're the only country in the world that has never been colonized, not only that, we've always been, I think, in my opinion, the greatest Black nation in the world. And this stems from our unity. This stems from us being able to live with one another, kind of celebrating our differences and that never being something to come between us, but rather like hold us together. I think our diversity has always been our strength. Our diversity in not only ethnic groups, but also in religion as well, I think has always been our strength. That's simply because we've been an example to the rest of the world that we, with so many differences in ethnic groups, with so many different branches, we've always been able to hold each other together whatsoever, and been kind of are at our greatest points working together. So I think disregarding what's happening right now, and despite what's being thrown at the country and our country and its history, I think my greatest pride is the fact that we've accomplished so much by being unified and by standing together so far. And I think that if we have that same mentality, and not only will we be able to save Ethiopia and kind of lay a path for a much greater generation of greatness for the country, but also be able to create a generation full of youth, even the older people that have as much love for the country as much as we do. Like she said earlier, it's not that we're saying we're more educated than a lot of people or anything like that, because we are young still, we are learning, we still have a lot to learn, and we do admit to that. But I think it only takes love for the country in order to for you to start your first step in the matter of change and educating yourself about the country. So I think I hope to see a greater Ethiopia, with us being unified, regardless of our difference in both religion and ethnic divisions.
Yeah, it only takes love, right, for us to be united. Any last word you guys want to share with us before we close up?
Last words for me is, I guess it's really easy to ignore what's happening, and I really want to speak to the youths our age, that it's really easy to scroll past what's happening, or to make this, an Africa or Ethiopia problem. But I urge you to not, and to please care about the Ethiopians' lives like you care about the rest. And for example, the Black Lives Matter movement it was a tough battle. There was a lot of organizing and people who were silenced time and time again. And now, it's thankfully trending, and the eye is all on the movement. But don't wait for that, for us to trend, or for this to become a thing, for you to wake up to what is happening, and don't be scared to ask, and not just us, I mean like your parents or online, or look up about what's going on, and don't be scared to talk to your people who disagree with you. And those are the last words that I have. And for the older generation, listen to the youths, and I don't mean just us, I mean the youths, even those you just don't agree with, and the people you easily dismiss because you just assume they're here to destroy Ethiopia. Like, listen to their anger, because when anger is being constantly silenced, it's going to blow up. So please listen to us in terms of, we do have things to say, and we do want to learn. So for the older generation, please don't make this about politics or about this person or that person, because it's only when a system changes we can change. Changing your ruler every 5, 10, 20 years is not going to change the core of the system. So help us change that so we can have a better future for your kids and for ours as well.
I think, like she said, everything on that aspect. And again, it is very simple for all of us to kind of dismiss it and say like, oh, this is an African issue, or oh, this is that. I didn't grow up there, so this is my culture, my parents. I think there's a terminology that's very common within kind of like the youth, the diaspora youth, where they're like, oh, that's where my parents are from, but I'm American. That's where my parents are from, but I'm like German. I'm from this, I'm from that. And I think it's very easy because again, like we mentioned earlier, of course, when a cop stops you, they're not going to be like, oh, what country are you from, or you're Ethiopian, or this or that. Of course, they're not going to distinguish that, but just see you as a Black person. But I think us individually, although it is very easy for you to deny where you're from, look at me, I'm very light skinned, and so many times I do get kind of comments as to like, oh, are you even full Ethiopian? You look mixed, or not even forget Ethiopian. A lot of people just somehow don't see the fact that I'm Ethiopian in the way I look. I don't know how, but they're very quick to like kind of label me mixed or from like a non-Ethiopian kind of basis. And if I was to follow that mentality, it would be very quick for me to dismiss the fact that I'm originally Ethiopian. My parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents are fully Ethiopian. And it's very easy for me to dismiss that. But if I didn't, I think you can too. So stop dismissing and kind of ignoring where you're from. You are Ethiopian, whether we like it or not, that's our blood. Therefore, pay attention to it just because that is the land that you've originated from, and whether you were born there or not. And yeah, I would love to emphasize on that. And then also lastly, we would love to thank Adebabay Media for giving us this platform. You guys haven't been pressuring us to think in a certain way or to speak a certain way. You've created a very safe space for us and for the youth. And we would really love to thank you and appreciate you for that. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to add to that. When we started out, a lot of people ignored us, they insulted us, they silenced us. Big media, big social media pages, this Abasha pages and things like that. We were told like, a lot of things that I don't want to repeat. And it was the first time that, publicly you wanted to hear us. We've been removed from, places where we're supposed to have, open discussion. People have tried to, make this a political thing or say, oh, you're being paid by that. You're doing, someone is paying you on the side and things like that. And it's the first time that, I honestly was shocked when she said Adebabay Media wants to talk to us and things like that, because I couldn't believe that someone actually wanted to hear us without, oh, you should answer this or you should hate on this or, things like that. And that's what we've been looking for. So thank you. And we hope that other media, not just big ones, we're talking about like the small social media pages or the ones that are, have media presence to, give platforms, not just to people like us, but to people who are, talking at this moment and want to be heard because we have a lot to say and we're not going to follow an agenda that you specifically want. And we really want to thank Adebabay Media for giving us that platform and to speak about ourselves and give us an audience that actually listens.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. We're really, really happy to have you. It's been, at least for me, it's been such an educational conversation. So thank you. We really appreciate you and your work.
Thank you, and we also want to say thank you, Hermila and Bethlehem, also Hiwat. We had a really great conversation. First out of money, we will continue this. So this will be the first. Just a recap on everything that we have been talking about, and a straight message to all of our audience that have joined us today, including our parents. If we could take anything out of our conversation today, I believe 3 things should be one thing we should take. And the first thing we talked about again and again heavily with both Bethlehem and Herbila is education. Everything starts from knowing our country, and it starts not only by history, but like they reiterated again and again, the language. Knowing our language, knowing the history of our language. And when we say language, of course, we're not only speaking of Amarinya, but the beautiful languages that we have in Ethiopia, and along with its culture. If we knew our history, beginning from our language and alphabet, we wouldn't, half of the things that we're seeing today might not be there. So let's start with educating our kids. And I would like to say this again with Amarinya, because this truly means a lot to me. ከወላጆች ነው የሚጀምረው እና ልጆቻችንን እኛን ወጣቱንም ከቤት ነው የሚጀምረው, which is actually my second one. Start the conversation. And the conversation starts from at home. We don't have to wait discussions in online or Zoom. All those things are great, but it starts from home. You guys are listening to us from home. ይሄን እያያችሁ ነው ከልጆቻችሁ ጋር on dinner table. Discuss about the things that's going on. Discuss about ብዙዎቻችን እናንተ የምታውቋትን ኢትዮጵያ እናቃትን እና የናንተ ኃላፊነት ትልቁ ሚና የናንተ ኃላፊነትና ሚና አለው ማለት ነውና ከዛ ቤት ውስጥ ከምናደርገው ውይይት ብንጀምር ነው መልካም የሚሆነው. Let's start the conversation at home. But not least, a lot of times one of the problems we have as Ethiopians is we are emotionally attached to our beloved country. We love our motherland. We do help one another as much as we can. But when it's time to actually be involved, sugano chigrachin, and not let us be involved. It is our job. It is our duty. It's heartbreaking to hear. Again, it's our unfortunate. It has become our unfortunate culture where we don't help one another. We shouldn't hear Betaliam say that this, for the first time, it's only Adebabay that has asked them to voice their concern or have this conversation. We should all be part of this conversation. We should help, and not only conversate, but when we conversate, we should have that mentality of mentanigber. What should we do? How can I be involved with this amazing organization? How can I have my children be part of this organization? One thing they mentioned that I was really awed and surprised is they even have a department for like education or history department, right? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but like a department that will teach Ethiopian history. So this means it's not, they don't have to be 19, 18 or older than that to be involved. You could have your children involved as early as 5 and 6 to educate them and to have them part of this organization. As Adebabay, and speaking as myself, I want to see this organization grow everywhere and flourish, and see not only every youth, but the parents and all of us stand together and be involved on the issues, because this concerns all of us. We should be thanking you, Hermela and Betalim. What you guys are doing is inspirational, and we would love to help with everything that is in our power. And speaking on behalf of Adebabay, thank you for coming and speaking as a brother, and also with you, if she has anything to say, she could also say it. Speaking as a brother and sister, we are glad that this kind of movement had started, and a lot of times we have lacked the voice of the youth, the voice of the young ones, the millennials, for a long time, but this has changed. So this is really inspiring. ሁላችሁም በዚህ ሰዓት ከኛ ጋር ሆናችሁ ይህንን ውይይት የተካፈላችሁ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ አባላት ሁሉ እናመሰግናለን። Thank you everybody, and good night. Next Thursday, before I finish, our conversation will continue about on matters of the youth, but the subject we will be covering on will be youth ministry in the United States and abroad. We're going to specifically focus on United States youth organizations and Sunday schools. We'll have conversation with 6 major organizations and Sunday schools around the states. Stay tuned. I believe if anything does not change, it will be next Thursday, the same time. Stay tuned. Help Adebabay Media share and subscribe to our YouTubes, and this is where it starts. We should all do our parts to be part of this voice, to be part of this standing in unity and standing for Ethiopia. Again, thank you everybody, and have a blessed night.